What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, as a special treat for my sister's birthday, I decided to run one of her favorite Pokemon in the Great League, Shadow FLYGON. This Pokemon is by no means a good Pokemon to use, but like a lot of Dragon types, it has a lot of fast pressure. It also has very good coverage with Scorching Sands, and I'm very excited to see how it's going to play out. Before we get into the battles, I just want to say if you've been liking these videos and you want to see more content like this in the future, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton. But let's get into the battles and see what Shadow FLYGON can do. Alright, let's get into game number 1. Shadow FLYGON in the lead up against a Shadow Feraligatr. This Pokemon is a remarkably neutral matchup here. Obviously, these Hydro Cannons, due to our ground typing, will be neutral, but look at how much damage we actually do with our fast move pressure, almost taking them down into the red already just with fast moves already this game. In comes likely a Hydro Cannon here. We'll shield it up because Shadow FLYGON is very squishy. And in the backline, a Talonflame, a Pokemon that our FLYGON actually has a ton of play into. Once again, Incinerate not doing too much damage to us. Dragon Claw likely drawing a shield from this Talonflame. We can throw yet another Dragon Claw before they're going to get to another charge move here. This should either draw a shield or do a massive amount of damage. Our opponent has a decision to make, and they opt to double shield their Talonflame against our FLYGON. Now, I could shield this attack up, but I don't really like going down shields when I know our Shadow Drapion in the backline could put in a lot of work up shields, and that Shadow Feraligatr up energy could be very bad if I end up going down completely with my shields here. So instead, I'm going to leverage energy on Shadow Drapion, try to knock out this Talonflame, and see what our opponent is going to do. They actually end up swapping out to a Tentacruel here, a Pokemon that Corviknight is going to have a fantastic matchup into. Honestly, I haven't used much Corviknight since I used it at its release. I don't know how good of a Pokemon it really is. I'm a little bit disappointed in how it's performed in the past, but I am going to be excited to see how it pairs with Shadow FLYGON today. It is on paper one of the best Pokemon to pair with it, a very good answer to a lot of the fairy types. You're going to see a lot of the bulkier Pokemon as well, so we'll see if it's actually going to be a good Pokemon for us today. In comes yet another Scald here. Unfortunately, Corviknight is not exactly the highest damaging Pokemon, so even with super effective Sand Attack, we're not able to knock them out with one charge move. We will need to land this next Sky Attack, and also our opponent getting 2 Scald debuffs here. Not exactly what we want to see, but Sky Attack should still be enough to get the KO, and I think at this point, Shadow Drapion should be able to get the KO against both this Talonflame and that Tentacruel, or was it the Feraligatr rather, still left over in the backline. We should be able to land the Aqua Tail here, and then the Crunch against the Gator, and we should have this game, Shadow Drapion closing out the backline and winning us game number 1. Shadow FLYGON somehow cord breaking a team already today. Love to see it. Alright, in the next game here, we're going to see our Shadow FLYGON in the lead up against a Corviknight. Definitely not the best lead matchup to see, but we know that they don't have too much fast move pressure against us here, and we actually do outpace them to Dragon Claws potentially, so we might be able to brute force our way through this matchup. I don't really want to swap out because Shadow Drapion is not the best matchup here. Shadow FLYGON, honestly, is still doing a lot more fast move pressure than they are to us, as we are to them, so there is a chance we can brute force our way through this. In comes a Scorching Sands. It does do a little bit more raw damage than a Dragon Claw would do, so I want to just let them no-shield this and then try to farm them all the way down with fast moves. Our opponent is going to opt to shield up, or no shield rather, and make us shield up this next charge move. Let's see what it's going to be. Another Iron Head, and then in comes a swap out to a Galarian Corsola. We don't actually have a great answer to this. We do have our Shadow Drapion, which is a decent check, but I mean, down 2 shields, I think Corsola can double shield and put in a lot of work here, so I'm going to go for an Aqua Tail bait. Maybe I can draw a shield, maybe I can land another Aqua Tail or a Crunch later on. I'm going to go for a second Aqua Tail bait. We got the first one off successfully. Can we get the 2 for 2 here? Aqua Tail is going to get the shield. That is good for us right now, but I think they are almost at their next charge move. I am 1 Poison Sting away from an Aqua Tail, but 2 away from a Crunch. They're only 1 Astonish away from their next charge attack. I'm going to do 1 Poison Sting, wait a turn to try to CMP them on their charge attack here to make sure we get as much damage as possible and force them to drain energy. Aqua Tail does do a decent chunk of damage, putting them nearly at half HP, and at this point, this Corsola is going to be a little bit more manageable for a backline. Nightshade is going to be thrown. That move is going to knock out our Shadow Drapion, unfortunately, but at this point I can go for the Scorching Sands before I get too much more Astonish damage against us and hope that the final Pokemon is a pick that Corviknight's going to have play into. Scorching does end up knocking out the Corsola. In comes a Malamar. These Sidewaves are doing so much fast move pressure, but I know Corviknight does resist these Sidewaves. With that said, they still do 2 damage per turn, and I know that Foul Play and Superpower are both neutral damage against us. In comes a Superpower. It looks like here our opponent is going to swap out, try to catch a move. I don't quite fall for it, but I still have to throw a charge attack if I want to knock out this Corviknight before they can get to another charge attack. So I will throw the Iron Head and try to reach a Sky Attack against this Malamar before they can knock us out with Sideways plus a charge move. If we can survive this attack here, I have my Sky Attack. I don't think it's going to be quite enough to knock them out, but if I can put them into range where 1 Dragon Tail is going to be enough to KO this Malamar, there is a chance to win this game. Sky Attack was reached just barely on 1 HP, and comes Shadow FLYGON. 1 Dragon Tail knocks out the Malamar and wins wins us the match there. Once again, a very close endgame. GG's for our opponent. All right, Annihilate is a Pokemon that our whole team is a little bit soft to here. We obviously have a flying type Pokemon in the back line, but we take neutral damage to counter with our entire team, and Shadow FLYGON does not really want to take this Fast Food Pressure, especially after the Rage Fist buff. With that said, we do have a lot of Fast Food Pressure ourselves with the Dragon Tail, and we also have Dragon Claw, which is a very quick move, but our opponent safe swapping a Diggersby, a Pokemon that we are very weak to with this team. Scorching Sands is going to try its best to chip down this Diggersby, but our opponent could shield this attack up, which they do, and no attack drop, unfortunately for us. They do throw another charge move here, though I think that was just a Fire Punch. They didn't even build up to a Scorching Sands. We can survive that, reach another Dragon Claw to at least chip them down a little bit more, and then come in with either our Corviknight or Shadow Drapion to try to finish this off. Dragon Claw does end up getting a shield here, which is kind of interesting, so I'm going to come back in Corviknight and see if we can kind of neutralize this thing. We do resist these quick attacks, but Fire Punch is super effective. It's going to be able to 3-shot us, 2-shot us over time as well if they get a lot of fast move pressure into us. Fire Punch number 1, putting us at about 60% HP, the next Fire Punch coming through, and our opponent is trying their best to whittle down our flying and steel type Pokemon. At this point, our Drapion does get to avoid both an Annihilate and a Diggersby, so hopefully our Shadow Drapion is going to have play in the backline. Sky Attack won't be enough to knock out here. Sand Attack as well has almost no fast pressure. Oh, that is not what we want to see. Steelix in the backline, super effective Thunder Fang damage, and of course the ability to resist Poison Sting in our backline matchup. Our FLYGON, which is our best answer, is almost completely knocked out at this point, and even a Breaking Swipe would do a ton of damage to us, so I'm not in a great spot here. We do get some chip damage with that Sky Attack, and this Aqua Tail is going to be able to potentially knock them out if they don't get a Breaking Swipe debuff, but they have so much HP across the board that Diggersby is still alive, Annihilate is still alive, Steelix is still alive, getting a lot of damage into us. Luckily, no Breaking Swipe debuff. I'm going to overfarm as much as possible and see if I can land a crunch against that Annihilate. In comes the Aqua Tail. Our opponent does not have any shields left over. Yeah, no, they are going to have to let that go. And in comes the Ape. Counter's doing way too much damage to us here, but they make a fantastic catch on their Diggersby. I have to go for a complete undercharge here, try to get full Poison Sting down, maybe have a crunch for me out of this. I do undercharge properly, but our opponent does CMP on the Fire Punch here, unfortunately for us, which means that now I think that we are not going to be able to Poison Sting down before they can quick attack us down, and they do take the game there with their Annihilate in the backline, being able to just sweep through our team. GG's to them, very close matchup. Next game, a Gastrodon up against our Shadow FLYGON. This is a very, I was going to say a neutral matchup, but honestly, this has got to be kind of bad for FLYGON. They outpace us with these body slams here, and I don't think that a Dragon Claw will draw a shield super early on, but they might shield us up anyway if they want to go for switch. Let's see what's going to happen. Dragon Claw does draw the first shield, and our opponent is going to throw a body slam here. I think at this point, my only hope is surviving the next body slam so I can get the next Dragon Claw off. If that is going to happen, there's a good chance we can win this game, but I think Shadow FLYGON's just a little bit too squishy here, but I cannot invest this shield. I don't think that's a good idea when Shadow Drapion normally needs shields itself in the backline. In comes Corviknight. We're going to have to hope that they're ABA weak to us, but no, they instantly swap out to a flying type Pokemon, a Drifblim, a Pokemon which we are a little bit weak to, but we have our Shadow Drapion with super effective Crunch, which is going to put in a lot of work into this Pokemon. Crunch does end up landing here. No defense drop though, and in comes an Icy Wind. I think after this Icy Wind, I don't know if I can actually get a full Poison Sting down before the next Icy Wind is going to come through. I am still going to shield it up because I know that Drapion is a very useful Pokemon up energy, even against a Pokemon like that Gastrodon. And comes the next Icy Wind here, our opponent making a decision to throw it, and then probably just come in with either, I guess, not even their Gastrodon. Interesting stuff. They came in with, I think that was a Pidgeot actually. Hold on, Corviknight might have a lot of play here. Shadow Pidgeot at that, they let that move through. Okay, I think at this point there's a good chance we win this game. They could have Brave Bird, but I've been seeing a lot of these Shadow Pidgeots running Aerial Ace and Feather Dance, so if they don't have Brave Bird here, I don't think they can win this game. In comes the first Iron Head, our opponent overfarming a ton of energy, but they don't quite have the counts of Corviknight down. I get to another Iron Head before they even throw potentially an not an Iron Head, a Feather Dance or an Aerial Ace, which means that we get the knockout there, and Gastrodon is sitting in the water, having no play against our Corviknight. We can go for this Sky Attack, get a knockout against the Gastrodon. Corviknight kind of core breaking the backline, and somehow winning us this game. GG's to them. Alright, next matchup, FLYGON in the lead up against a Shadow Annihilate. Alright, another very tricky lead matchup. We were talking about how we don't have a single fighting resist on this team, but we have so much fast food pressure in this lead matchup, there's a good chance that we can kind of brute force our way through this and make it so this Pokemon is a little bit less of a threat. With that said, these counters have added up so much against our HP already this game. Rage Fist is going to boost their attack stat, and Dragon Claw is likely going to draw a shield, but if they no-shield this, they've got most of my FLYGON taken care of, and they've taken a shield from me. What is going to happen? Our opponent does try to go for switch advantage this game, which is likely a good play because they get the full counter down, and there's a good chance they can reach a Rage Fist against our Corviknight here. This is looking kind of bad. We're going to take about half of our health just from this Rage shift plus the counter damage here, which is not looking good for us in the backline, depending on what our opponent is going to have. Let's see what they come in with here. Our opponent thinking for just a second, but no, they do have an answer for us. That's not what we want to see. A Shadow Bastiodon, a Shadow Annihilate. That is terrible for us right now. What is their final Pokemon going to be? They're staying in for a second. Maybe Shadow Drapion has play. We did a bit of sand attack damage, so maybe this is range where 2 Aqua Tails can knock out Stone Edge. Does get shielded up. Our opponent, though, in the back, having a Shadow Diggersby. Okay, well, we're not winning that one, but GG's to them. Our next matchup, a Shadow Flygon in the lead up against a Morpeko. Fantastic lead matchup here. They could have access to potentially Seed Bomb. It might get Outrage too. I don't remember exactly what the moveset is on Morpeko for those weird coverage moves. Normally it runs Psychic Fangs and Aura Wheel though, so that is what I'm going to have to watch out for. In comes a Frenzy Plant against our Shadow Drapion, which is interesting. Normally don't see Decidueye in Open Great League, but I do have a Crunch ready to go, and I'm hoping at this point they let it go. Crunch would be able to knock out this Decidueye if they do opt to no-shield it, which they do, and the Morpeko is going to get a farm down, but we have to keep in mind, if they don't have access to Seed Bomb, they're only going to have access to an Electric-type Aura Wheel for their first charge move, or potentially a Psychic Fangs. And comes our first Aqua Tail. I think that next Thunder Shock, though, will knock us out, which is a little bit unfortunate. It means we do waste a bit of energy. I'm going to no-shield, hope for no Seed Bomb. If this is a Psychic Fangs, we can survive it, but it does do quite a bit of damage, honestly. The next one would be able to knock us out here. Our opponent is staying in, getting another Psychic Fangs into our Shadow Flygon, so I'm going to shield, farm them down, and hopefully Corviknight and Flygon in the backline can win this game. Our opponent is going to come in with their final Pokemon here. Unfortunately for them, it is a Shadow Venusaur, probably the best case scenario for a Corviknight. Love to see it. GG's to them. Alright, next game here, Unova Stunfisk in the lead. That is a fantastic lead, but they could land Mud Bombs against us later on, which would do a lot of damage. They safe swap a Chestnut, but unfortunately, the second that I swapped in Corviknight, I knew I kind of messed up. They likely have Thunder Punch if they're safe swapping this Pokemon, which means that this is not anywhere near the comfortable matchup you'd expect it to be for a Flying and Steel type Pokemon. We don't do any fast move pressure here, and we know that super effective Thunder Punch will put us into Vine Whip down range very soon. Sky Attack will be able to one-shot them, but it is such a slow charge move here, it's not going to be enough to knock them out or outpace them before they can Vine Whip us all the way down in the 2-shield matchup. I'm hoping at this point it's a double grass lineup. If that is the case, there's a decent chance that Shadow Flygon could just sweep this one, but I also know it might be something completely different, and if that is the case, this could be a very bad backline for us. Flygon going to come back in, try to get a full farm down against the Chestnut. They did already show Thunder Punch, so likely they have to throw a Frenzy Plant if they want to do any sort of damage to Flygon here. Shield up this attack and see if we can get that full Dragon Tail down. Our opponent does not reach another charge move. What is going to be in the backline? It is a Wigglytuff. Yeah, if I just came in Shadow Drapion into the Chestnut, I would have RPS this game. Unfortunately, I came in the Flying type into the grass and fighting type Pokemon, and I guess that was a mistake, but GG's to our opponent. Next matchup here going to be a Shadow Quagsire into our Shadow Flygon. We have so much fast move pressure, but they are a very spammy Pokemon, and Mudshot is going to start adding up against us as well, but I can probably just 2-shield my way through this matchup and brute force our way through a Pokemon that would be a bit tricky for our backline. Aqua Tail does get shielded. We have the Dragon Claw of our own. This will likely either draw a shield or get a knockout from the Shadow Quagsire. They are very squishy, or at least when you're fighting a Shadow Flygon, they do have to respect that move a little bit more, and in comes yet another charge move. At this point, I will just shield this up, go for a full Dragon Tail down, and win the 2-1 shield matchup. We have a lot of energy. Let's see what our opponent wants to do here. What do they have to absorb this? If there's a Pokemon in the backline that absorbs all of our energy, I don't want to stay in, but honestly, I guess I kind of have to, right? This thing has Earthquake. I can't swap out. I'm going to go for a Scorching Sands. We do draw a shield, I guess. I guess I should have just gone for double Dragon Claw, actually. I wasn't expecting the shield there, but I guess it makes sense here if they think Walrein has play in the backline, which honestly, it does have quite a bit of play. With that said, this is a non-Shadow Walrein. These Icicle Spears and Powder Snows are going to do a lot less damage than the Shadow variant would, so I know I can survive these two, get off a Sky Attack, and potentially have a good matchup in the backline. They've already had 2 answers, or at least very strong Pokemon into Shadow Drapion. I'm just hoping that right now their third Pokemon is not going to be yet another answer to us. In comes an Icicle Spear. This move is going to be able to put us very low. It won't be enough to knock us out, though, so they need to dump all of their energy here, and at this point, Shadow Drapion can get a full Poison Sting down against this Pokemon, and potentially use an energy lead against whatever is in the back. Our opponent sees our Shadow Drapion. They don't swap out, actually, and I guess they top left. Must be a very weak Pokemon in the backline to our Shadow Drapion. Love to see it. Next game here, going to be a Malamar in the lead. Very neutral lead matchup, but I don't want to stay in there. Potentially, I have better matchups for this in the back, so I'm going to swap out and see what they're going to do. In comes a Shadow Quagsire. This Pokemon obviously is a very strong answer to our Poison-type Pokemon, but we do draw a shield here because in the Zero Shield matchup, it can be a little bit awkward for the Quagsire to win, especially if they don't land a Stone Edge. I'm going to call that this is an Aqua Tail. I can survive it, get off yet another Crunch, and then get a farm down with either my Corviknight or my Shadow Flygon. Probably my Shadow Flygon at this point. I think Corviknight has very little fast move pressure, so I have to go for a Dragon Tail down if I want any chance of getting a fast move down against this Pokemon. We'll shield up the Aqua Tail. It would do a considerable amount of damage to us right now. So I want to make sure our FLYGON is a little bit healthy. Oh, but man, in the back is a Dugong. That is not what you want to see. Corviknight's going to try its best here, but I think we're in a very bad spot. Our opponent throwing an Icy Wind before we can even reach a charge move, and at this point, these Ice Shards and Icy Winds are going to two-shot us over time, and we're going to get debuffed further and further in this matchup. And once we are through with our Corviknight, I don't even know how I'm going to be able to take out this Dugong with our Shadow FLYGON. With that said, we can survive this next charge move. There's a chance I can at least put them into Dragon Tail downrange, but this is going to be such a tricky endgame. They have a Malamar that's very healthy. They also have that Quagsire, which is also a little bit of a threat, maybe a catch potential for them later on this game. Sky Attack number 2 does draw a shield here. I'm going to overfarm just a little bit, go for this Dragon Claw, but I don't know if we have enough HP to knock out the Malamar here this game. In comes the Dragon Claw. Our opponent does let it go. No catch does happen, and Malamar comes in, but these side waves are doing far too much fast pressure. I don't even reach the Scorching Sands. We are going to get knocked out before we can even have a chance there. GG's to our opponent. Next game, a Shadow Steelix up against our Shadow FLYGON. Obviously, we have the resistance to that electric-type fast pressure, but they could have Breaking Swipe, which would be a little bit awkward later on. With that said, a Shadow Drifloon safe swap is exactly what we want to see. Shadow Drapion is one of the best answers for this in the game, and our opponent likely going to go for an Icy Wind to try to debuff our attack stat. With that said, this is Shadow into Shadow. Even after that debuff, I think a Crunch is going to very much threaten their health, especially after the Dragon Tail damage I got into them, and we also got a debuff here with that first Crunch. I'm going to throw instantly to try to make sure I can get a second shield, so I don't have to go down 2 shields to 0 or to 1 against this Pokemon, and we do draw the shield, another defense drop at this point. It doesn't really matter, but we'll see what our opponent is going to do. We are debuffed once again with our attack stat, and our opponent is going to let this Crunch land potentially against them, or not. They make a fantastic catch with their Steelix. Unfortunately for us, that means a double debuffed Crunch is going to go into the wrong target, and they have a bit of energy on this. They might be able to reach a Breaking Swipe against us if they do happen to have it. With that said, I have seen some Steelix running Crunch, maybe Earthquake as well. Hopefully this is just a Psychic Fangs here, which it actually is going to be, which means we survive it a little bit easier. I can overfarm just a bit more and potentially use this energy against whatever might be in the back. They might come back in with that Drifloon as well. If that is the case, I have a Dragon Claw ready to go. They're pretty low on that Pokemon. They're not quite yet at the Icy Wind. I think they're one move away. Oh, but that's not good for us. A Wigglytuff in the back. I mean, I guess there's still play, right? We have our Corviknight, which can wall this Pokemon. We have our Shadow Drapion, which is very close to another charge move, and there is a good chance this game, as long as we don't take a lot of damage with our Corviknight, we are actually able to swap into our Shadow Drapion, reach this Aqua Tail before they throw the Icy Wind, which means we get the knockout here. We have our Corviknight at full HP with Iron Head against the Wigglytuff, our opponent realizing it is over. GG's to them. Okay, well, that's a terrible lead. Honestly, Dugong is one of the trickiest Pokemon for this whole team. I hate that I'm seeing so many of them right now. With that said, Shadow Drapion is going to try its best here to go for Crunch and Poison Sting pressure to potentially knock them out here. Maybe chip them down as much as possible. But they opt to shield the first attack up. That likely means an Icy Wind's coming through here, which is a little bit disappointing. It means that our Shadow Drapion is not going to put in a lot of damage into this Pokemon, and in comes an Azumarill. This is looking so bad. So far, they have 2 hard answers to our Shadow FLYGON. I don't know exactly what we can do here. We don't have a great answer to Ozu, honestly, either with this team. Corviknight's kind of neutral, but I need my Corviknight as well for that Dugong, so this game is looking kind of terrible for us right now. Crunch number 2 is going to end up landing. Our opponent is going to stay in for a second when I swap into my Shadow FLYGON. I guess they are switch locked for just a second, so if I can build up energy, potentially get 2 Scorching Sands to threaten that Dugong, there might still be a chance for us. With that said, I have no idea what their final Pokemon's going to be. There's a good chance it's not going to be that good for our Corviknight to see, and in comes yet another charge move. Ice Beam would be able to one-shot us. I'm going to overfarm a little bit here, try to get as much energy out of this matchup as possible, and see if potentially we can knock out this Azumarill with our FLYGON. Scorching Sands would be able to knock out if they let it through, which our opponent does opt to do, but that Dugong didn't take too much damage, and I think that Scorching Sands is not going to be able to be enough to knock them out here, so this game is still looking incredibly terrible for us right now. Scorching Sands does end up getting the debuff and landing, but at this point, I can't really Sand Attack down before we get to an Icy Wind against us. I have to try to make a catch. Our opponent has a Goodra in the backline. Sand Attack is adding up a little bit here, but they have Thunder Punch, they have Aqua Tail, and the Corviknight is so slow to charge moves here. I don't know if we have quite enough in the tank to win this game. They shield up our Sky Attack. I need a catch to have any chance. I try to catch at an arbitrary time, but it doesn't really work out. They get the full farm down, and they take us out there. GG's to our opponent. All right, next matchup here, it's going to be the Annihilate in the lead. We have a lot of neutral fast move and charge move pressure against them, but we know Annihilate has access to Rage Fist. Our backline is very weak to this Pokemon, so I'm going to try to neutral game my way through this, draw shields from them, try to whittle this down to a range where it's a little bit more manageable for a backline, and see what they want to do. In comes the first Rage Fist here. Our opponent is going to have a decision to make. Are they fine just getting that shield advantage, or do they want to go for switch? They do opt to let that Dragon Claw go, actually, and in comes a Wigglytuff. I don't want to give that farm down. I feel like Shadow FLYGON could potentially be a little bit more useful in the backline, which I guess it kind of could be here. They have a Shadow Drapion of their own. Aquatail number 1 is going to end up landing, doing quite a bit of damage to them, but at this point, I don't know what we're going to be able to do with our Shadow FLYGON at this point. They have their Wigglytuff that could charm us down at any moment, so I'm going to try my best here to use our Dragon Claw that we almost have loaded on FLYGON, potentially knock out this Drapion later on, but they are always going to have that option to snipe us down. They do end up shielding this next move, or they will have to. If they don't end up shielding it, they will get knocked out, and then Corviknight just wins the end game here. So I'm expecting a shield, and at this point, I've got what I needed to out of our Shadow Drapion. We baited out this Drapion of our opponent. We have our FLYGON, which can deal with this, and we have our Corviknight for that Wigglytuff. I do come in here with our FLYGON. I swap out instantly when I say that Wigglytuff to come in, save that Dragon Claw of energy, and now Corviknight should be able to win this endgame. All we have to do is land an Iron Head, maybe go for a full farm down after the fact. I don't know quite if we can do that, actually. It's going to be kind of close if we can get a full farm down or not, because Wigglytuff does have a decent amount of HP here, Sand Attack not being a very damaging fast move as well. In comes the Icy Wind to make it so our Fast Move Pressure doing even less damage here is going to make the farm down even more tricky. With that said, I do have a Dragon Claw on FLYGON. All I need to do is shield, farm all the way down. I might even survive a Swift. I don't want to risk that, though. So we're going to shield up this Swift, go for a full farm down, and then Sky Attack this Shadow Drapion. This should be enough to knock out. Even if it's not, we have a Dragon Claw on our Shadow FLYGON, and we should be able to take this game. GG's to our opponent. All right, next game, Shadow FLYGON is going to be met with a Dugong in the lead. Fantastic stuff. Love seeing this Pokemon. It seems like a very common pick in the Go Bad League. Maybe I should not have been basically triple weak to it today. With that said, I say swap my Shadow Drapion. They come in with a Superior to answer our Shadow Drapion. Grass type into a Poison type, not exactly the best matchup. Maybe a miss swap by them, or maybe they just don't have a great answer in the back. With that said, if they don't have an answer, I'm surprised they wouldn't have just stayed in with their Dugong into me, but I'm totally fine with it at this point. We're just going to use all of this energy that we can with our Shadow Drapion, try to win this game using this damage that we have here, go for a full Poison Sting down if we can. Our opponent does end up CMPing us once again on a Frenzy Plant. I'm going to shield it up because I know that health on Shadow Drapion is going to be very important. With that said, I also know that Shadow FLYGON down shields is generally not that useful, so this game could still be a little bit tricky. Crunch number 1 does end up landing, and unfortunately we also get a defense drop here, which is going to guarantee either a knockout or a shield from this Dugong right now. Without that debuff, they could survive this attack, so they could just no shield and make our lives a little bit more tricky, but now I can get that shield come in with our Corviknight and try to start building up energy. I don't know what the final Pokemon is going to be this game, but I do want to make sure that this Dugong is out of the way, so we don't really have to deal with it with our FLYGON. In comes yet another Icy Wind. We can survive it though, and reach an Iron Head to still knock them out in just a second. Icy Wind number 2 puts us nearly into the red health here. We're going to overfarm as much as we can to have energy for whatever their final Pokemon might be. Iron Head is reached. This should still knock out despite being at -2 because their defense is also dropped on this Dugong. And what are they going to do? They're waiting for just a second here. What are they going to come in with? Our opponent taking a second to decide. In comes the non-Shadow Feraligatr. This is going to be very interesting. Oh no, I fell for the catch here, which means that now we have wasted so much energy. This Shadow Feraligatr, or non-Shadow Gator actually, is going to be able to put in a lot of work with this charge move energy that they have. They do throw a bit of energy early against our Shadow Drapion. They didn't have the count correct, at least completely here, which means that we are not at 100 energy on this Feraligatr. They were able to have a lot of energy for us, but not enough to be able to go for a Hydro Cannon against our Corviknight and an Ice Beam here. If we can survive a Hydro Cannon on our Shadow FLYGON, which we just barely can, we can still reach this Dragon Claw and KO this Feraligatr. That was a 1 HP win here. We had energy on Corviknight, but they had so much energy on that Gator. Very, very close endgame. Very good catch by them at the end of that matchup, but we were able to barely clinch it out. All right, next game going to be a Charjabug in the lead. There's the Dugong again, a Pokemon that I don't have a great answer to, so I'm going to try to use our Shadow Drapion as a counter swap. With that said, they do have access to super effective Drill Run, which would one-shot us. I'm going to call, though, that they go for an Icy Wind and try our best to just neutralize this in the lower shielding scenarios. In comes the first Crunch. This is going to do quite a bit of damage to them, but after that debuff, it's not going to be quite enough to two-shot, although with that Crunch debuff here, it might just be. With that said, I'm going for a crazy Aquatail bait. Our opponent does have to shield this up, though, if they want to win switch, which I think they probably would want to win switch with a Charjabug into FLYGON lead, and in comes another Charjabug. I'm just going to let it go and use our Corviknight to try to whittle down this Dugong. I have no idea what the third Pokemon is going to be this game. I'm hoping at this point we have play against whatever it's going to be. Icy Wind is not the most threatening move out there, so I can go for a full Sand Attack down, knowing that Sky Attack is still neutral against Charjabug. Maybe 2 Sky Attacks could two-shot them later on, and if FLYGON has a neutral matchup against whatever the final Pokemon is going to be, there is still a chance we can win this game. In comes A Scrafty. Okay, I saw fighting and dark. For a second, I thought that was a Pangoro. No, it's a Scrafty here, which honestly could be a bit tricky for us here if they're running Power Up Punch. With that said, I know sometimes you see Scrafties nowadays running the Charge Move Thunder Punch and Foul Play as their coverage attack. And it might just be the case here. They actually go for a Thunder Punch against us, which is not enough to boost up their counter damage. So maybe I can potentially reach another Dragon Tail of damage against them, go for a full Sand Attack down, and maybe win this game by landing 2 Sky Attacks against that Electric and Bug type Pokemon. It just comes down to at this point, are 2 Sky Attacks going to be enough to knock out Charjabug from basically full HP? Let's have to see here. In comes the first Sky Attack. How much damage does this do? Sky Attack number 1 coming through. Our opponent doesn't have any shields left. That might just be enough. We barely reach the next Sky Attack right before their next discharge, which means that this, as long as it knocks out, will KO the Charjabug and barely win us this match after we send attack down that Scrafty. GG's to our opponent. Very close game there. In comes a Dunsparce, though, in the next lead. Much better lead matchup than these Dugongs and stuff we've been seeing, and our opponent is going to opt to stay in here. Obviously, Dunsparce does have a lot of neutral charge move pressure, but these fast moves are resisted, so I don't mind this matchup as the FLYGON as long as they don't end up double shielding their Dunsparce. We'll see what they want to do, though, here the longer this matchup goes on. I know a Dragon Claw is not enough to knock out. I'm going to go full on for the Scorching Sands. Hopefully they're a little bit greedy here. They try to call a bait, which is what happens. We do knock out a ton of energy on that Dunsparce, and in comes a Serperior. I mean, the thing is, Serperior is a Pokemon we have a lot of play into with our full team, and I don't want to waste our Shadow Flygon when it might have a bit of a better matchup in the back, which it definitely does here. A Shadow Feraligatr is a Pokemon we absolutely had to bait out. We go for the Aqua Tail bait to force energy from them a little bit sooner. In comes a Hydro Cannon. This should knock us out here, but we still have our Shadow Flygon with a ton of fast move pressure, and we have our Corviknight in the backline ready to go against that Serperior later on this game. Our opponent has a lot of energy, though. If there's ever a chance they can reach a Hydro Cannon against their Corviknight, this game would not be completely over. Dragonclaw is going to draw the last shield almost certainly against this Pokemon, but they might no-shield it. No, they do shield up the attack, so these Dragon Tails are going to try their best to put them into Sand Attack downrange for our Corviknight. Our opponent doesn't have any energy. Do I knock them out with 10 Sand Attacks? I just have to hope that I can. I know Sand Attack's not a great move, but Sand Attack is going to be enough here to get that farm down and be able to use our Corviknight against the Serperior in the backline to win that match. Next game here, a Shadow Steelix in the lead. They do have access to Thunderfang. It could be a Dragon Tail user, but it looks like they probably aren't with the fact that they did end up swapping out instantly here. Our opponent, honestly, I should have thrown instantly here to be on good timing on a safe swap Annihilate, but the thing is the animations were absolutely terrible, so I just threw on safe timing just to make sure that I don't give them a ton of free energy, and in comes another charge move from our opponent, likely going to be a Rage Fist. This is going to boost our attack stat, but because this is a Shadow Annihilate, look at how much damage we've already done just with our fast move pressure, but I am very much worried about that Steelix in the backline. It is going to put in a lot of work against us if they start ramping up with these Breaking Swipe Psychic Fangs, and the Thunderfang damage as well is going to do a lot of damage to both our Drapion and to our Corviknight. Aqua Tail is super effective, though. This is a Shadow Steelix. It's two-shot here by Aqua Tail if I can end up landing them. I know I survive a Breaking Swipe pretty easily. We'll no-shield this and hope for no defense, or attack drop, rather. And we do dodge the debuff here, but our opponent is at yet another charge move here. Let's see what they want to do. Are they going to end up shielding this attack, or are they going to let this go? If they do let it go, I'm going to let go of my Shadow Drapion and hope it's a Wigglytuff or something in the backline that our Corviknight is going to be able to beat once Steelix is gone. Corviknight, can you do it? You can! It's a Serperior in the backline, able to secure us a 5-0 set to finish off the day in the 3100s ELO range. That was a crazy way to end off the day. I don't think Shadow Flygon, as I said at the start of the video, is any good, but it's a Pokemon that, honestly, it's a lot of fun. Like a lot of Dragon types, it has a ton of fast move pressure, and I guess it was also a decent showing of Corviknight. I haven't really tried it out since its first release, but it did a lot better today than it has in the past, and that was with a pretty bad team comp, in my opinion. Maybe I need to give it a go here in the future days with a bit more of a real lineup. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you want to see more content like this in the future, I'm going to be uploading a lot more videos to the channel, so I'd love it if you would leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton. Thank you again for watching, though, and take care. I'll see you in the next one.